Welcome into Montgomery and Company. We back at it, baby. I'm your host, Renee Montgomery. As you know, the WNBA Playoffs have just kicked off, and we're set for some exciting marches towards the finals. With more eyes ever on the WNBA, it's an exciting time for me. It's an exciting time for the players, the fans, all of us. I've appeared in 37 playoff games during my WNBA career that resulted in 2 championships with the Minnesota Lynx. So I wanted to take a second to just share what it's like entering the playoffs, what the mindset is, just to give you a sense of what some of these women are stepping into. First of all, playoff preparations are completely different than regular season games. Everything's elevated. I mean, to the nth degree. In the playoffs, you should not only know the concepts of a team, but you need to know their exact plays. You need to know the tendencies. I need to know if on the third play of the game, do they normally run this play? If so, can I stop them from doing that? I need to know what the other team's best player had for breakfast. It's that kind of thinking. You really do go into a rabbit hole because you're just trying to think of ways that, all right, we've already played every team during the regular season. You're trying to think of ways that you can get that little edge. I'm watching tape. I'm one of these nuts. So you heard about Kobe Bryant, the Mamba mentality. Y'all have heard about TB12. I don't know what LeBron is going to call his, but there's certain players like myself that when we get into this mode, I want all the information you can give me. I want all the stats. I want all the film, not only on the other team, but on myself. I want to know, dang, my third quarters is not where I need them to be, but watch this during the playoffs. They ain't going to expect me to have a big third quarter because I know they're probably watching my tape to see my tendencies. That's how I'm thinking. I'm thinking, all right, if I'm matching up against, and I've had to do this when I played for Minnesota, if I'm matching up against Diana Taurasi, I know that she's going to have a height difference on me. I know that she's going to have a lot of different advantages because she's so gifted offensively. So I'm trying to think, what ways can I make Diana just a little bit more uncomfortable? I got to pick her up 94 feet. Now, would I necessarily do that in a regular season game? I don't know, but that's how your mindset has to just switch when it comes to the playoffs. It's a whole different world. Like, that's the mindset of an athlete that's trying to, because you got to remember, one person can win. I know it sounds so simple every year, but think about this. Every single year in every single sport, everyone spends all off season trying to get better, trying to work on their weaknesses, trying to give themselves just that little bit advantage, that 2% advantage. And then every year it goes down to a knockdown drag out of the best, trying to see who is the best. That's what the playoffs are like. Every game is a championship game. I don't know what people be talking about with the next game. No, next game, nothing. Every game in the playoffs is a championship game. And especially in the WNBA, where sometimes we only have 3 games in the first round. Last year, the Atlanta Dream, we didn't even get a home game, and we made the playoffs. Unfortunately, we lost our first 2 games to Dallas, so we was out. So you best believe in the WNBA, it's time to giddy up. Okay, so as y'all know, I like to give out an MVP of the week. Well, this year, I'm giving out MVPs, multiples, because this has been just a wild year in the WNBA as far as records go. I mean, we had A'ja Wilson, who broke the single season scoring record for the most points scored in a WNBA season in history. Like, nobody has scored more points than A'ja Wilson in a WNBA season. But you would think that's enough. Caitlin Clark, she broke the assist record. She has now had more assists than any WNBA player in history. Then you have players like DeWanna Bonner, who, first of all, shouts to DeWanna Bonner. She's my class 2009. What's good? This is a player that started out as 6th Woman of the Year multiple times, and the longevity. Can we just get into it? Shouts to DB. I played with her overseas, and the way that sometimes people in Europe say our names is so entertaining, and they used to always just be like, DB. So now when I see her, I'll be like, DB. She just went from not only 5, she started the WNBA season at 5, she moved past that to 4, and right now she's knocking on the door to be number 3 in the all-time scoring list for the WNBA. Now she's a bona fide starter, all-star, all the things, and she's still going. Last but not least, I got to give an MVP to my homie. I call her TT. Her name is Tina Charles. I feel like she's been breaking every record this season. It's kind of crazy to keep up with her. She's on our squad, and we're just trying to think, what else can we do for Tina Charles? So TT this year, she's going to end up being number one. She's chasing it right now, but boy, is she close. She can end up being number one all time in rebounds. She can end up being number one all time in double doubles. That girl bad, all right? I was fortunate enough to play with TT at UConn, and I was also fortunate enough to play against TT in the pros. So shouts to my MVPs of the week. We'll be back, baby. I'm telling you, it's turned up. We'll be back with more MoCo. So as I mentioned at the top, the WNBA playoffs have kicked off, and we have one of the best broadcasters in the game to tell us what to watch for this postseason. Ryan Ruocco is a sportscaster and play-by-play announcer at ESPN and Yes Network, covering the NBA, WNBA, Yankees, and the Nets. He's co-hosted shows with Stephen A. Smith and CeCe Sabathia, and I'm hyped to have him here on MoCo as the WNBA playoffs kick off. Ryan, appreciate you joining us.
Hey, I always love to hear your voice, to see your face, to know that we're both fans of wooden slats in our background. I feel even more connected to you now.
I'm not going to tell folks how you just had a Coach Ariema moment trying to set this whole thing up, but let Rebecca know what just happened to you.
I will let her know, and I'll never hear the end of it, but I will.
Speaking of Rebecca, man, you've been calling games in the WNBA since 2013. And it's crazy to think, because now, can you just talk about the growth in the league, especially in this past year?
Yeah, it's amazing, Renee. And you've obviously been in and around the league and played for so long. It's incredible. Like, I think that all of us who've been in it have sensed, really palpable growth, especially over the last 7-8 years. When you think about your finals with LA, right? Those Minnesota LA finals, and the vibe and the energy and the way it was kind of grabbing some more general sports fans. And then in the aftermath of that, Breanna Stewart off her 4 championships in college, coming along, becoming the player she did in this league. And then Candace's championship after Stewie had 2 and 3 years with Sue in Seattle and Jewel, right? Kansas's championship in Chicago, and the way that garnered attention. And then the Aces dynasty and Asia Wilson looking like, maybe she'll end up being the greatest player of all time. That's how good she is, right? And so all of this growth was bubbling and bursting, and we were seeing it metrically, whether it was merchandise or ticket sales or ratings. And the ground was so fertile to have this star take it to the next level. And then we got it with Caitlin. And Caitlin was the star this league needed at this moment to take this simmering fire and turn it into an inferno. And, maybe if she had come along 15 years ago, wouldn't have had the same effect, right? But with the progress we felt and the way the league has continued to progress over the last, 7-8 years, and obviously more broadly over the last almost 3 decades now, it just felt like we were ripe for that star. And Caitlin has obviously delivered in her rookie year, and now the league is in this unbelievable place.
It's crazy that you just ran through. First of all, the way you just ran through all of that, it was like core memories unlocked with those 3 straight years playing LA in the finals. Is there a favorite moment of that when you're calling it? Like, is there anything that just stands out? Because you just mentioned so many, like, as you were going through them, I'm like, yep, I remember that. Oh yeah, Candace's homecoming, definitely remember that. Was there any like favorite moment for you?
There's a lot. There's a lot of favorite moments. One moment I think about that stands out when LA won. Not to bring up sore memories, Renee, but when LA won, and just seeing Candace and the pure emotion from her, actually her, I know she won one as well last year with the Aces when she couldn't play, but her like championship crowning moments, both her title in LA and her title in Chicago, like those images are seared into my mind. And I think it's because, for me, calling games, she was, one of the first players calling games that I was just like, whoa, this woman is unbelievable. I love that I get to sit courtside and watch her. And so you want a star like that to then have those affirming moments, right? Those legacy moments in their career. And that's where I always say your sports universe feels like it was set right. Like LeBron had to win one in Cleveland for the sports universe to feel like it was set right. And I just remember Candace and the emotion from her, and her getting emotional talking about Pat Summit as well after her first championship, and then winning in Chicago, and her running to Layla and hugging her on the floor, and I still feel chills feeling the arena. But another thing, there's a million things that stand out. Two more things that really jump out at me. Those games the next year in 2017, the finals that were played in the barn when
Yeah.
when y'all came back and beat LA, and the atmosphere in those games and the way it was just. I remember Maya. LA had a crazy comeback in Game 5, and then Maya hit a shot that she shouldn't have taken. She took it like too early, but it made it a 2-possession game with like 20 seconds left or something like that. And just the way the building exploded. And then Game 5, Seattle Phoenix, 2018, Sue Bird's fourth quarter, when Diana had been, I think it was like 16-0 in winner take all games at that point. And Seattle's down in the fourth quarter, and Sue puts up 14 points. That building is exploding. And it was this iconic moment from, a legend who you know well, obviously. And when she got to the bench, she just had this exhale. Like, she wasn't showing any kind of excitement, any kind of emotion. And she just went to the bench and she went like this. And I'll always remember looking at her and just seeing the exhale.
No, it's crazy because, again, as you're saying these things, I remember every single one of those moments. Like, I visually can see those moments. And you mentioned something. Now I got to hit on Diana Taurasi. Like, for people that may not have followed the WNBA as close all of her 20 seasons, like, how would you describe Diana Taurasi in her career?
She's so fun to watch. She's so dynamic. She's such a killer competitor. She's a winner. She plays with swag and attitude that I think was always appreciated, but probably in today's social media era, if she was coming along now, she'd get even more hype and fandom around her, as much as she's, already been celebrated in her career. The way she could pull off the dribble and just the way she moved, it's like, it was different. You watch Diana, coming out of college and then her early days in the W, and you're just like, whoa, this woman moves different, and watching her on the floor. And then you could feel that, Mamba mentality. Like, with her, you can feel it, right?
Definitely.
Like, it is there. And, and she's also, as we know, she is so funny.
Yes.
She is just a hilarious human being. And, I think when you talk about obviously Diana was voted the GOAT of the WNBA at the 25-year celebration. I think you certainly can also make a strong argument for Candace Parker. I think those are the top two players when you talk about breadth of work and career that this league has seen. Because some of the others who, like a Maya Moore, might have been in there. But
Maya might have to be up there pretty high too.
Yeah. And you know what? If she played 15 years, she probably, there's a good chance she's number one, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I hope that, when I'm talking about that, the ground had to be fertile for us to have this moment in 2024 now with women's basketball. I hope people fully appreciate and understand what a critical part Diana Taurasi was and will forever be of making that ground fertile and getting us to this place.
No, I love that, because it's like, I feel like it's crazy, because it's like we all knew that at a certain point retirement could come for DT, but now that it's kind of like showing itself. And did she just play her last game? With the X Factor, it's kind of like, whoa, like, dang, like, how are you going to describe this career that's just been unbelievable? And speaking of that, I want to get into a little bit of the playoffs. Who are you covering in the first round?
So we'll be on Indiana and Connecticut's first game and second game, and if they have a third game, their game. So all the Indiana Connecticut games, but we'll also be on Liberty and Dream game 2, and then potentially if there's a New York Atlanta game 3, we could also be on that. So because the series are starting in New York and Connecticut, we can geographically pull that off with our crew, without it being too difficult. So we can't do game 1 of New York against your Dream because it's at the same,
It's 1 and
same
3. Yeah.
yeah. But we'll be doing game 2 of that series, and if there's a game 3, and then we'll be with Indiana and Connecticut for the duration of their series.
No, okay, that's dope. So I want to I'm gonna kind of go through. Do you
Yeah.
have to ballot? By the way, do you fill out a ballot of the years? Because I saw Rebecca already started posting her stuff. Side note, there's a tweet Rebecca tweeted on September 8th that said there's only been one unanimous MVP in the history of the WNBA. Cynthia Cooper was a unanimous choice in 1997, receiving all 37 first place votes. Do you think we'll have another unanimous? Because to me, I feel like there's 2 unanimous. Rookie of the Year should and could be unanimous, and then MVP should and could be unanimous. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you on both things. I agree with you on both things. And for me, like, if you are trying to concoct an argument for someone other than A'ja Wilson, you are diving so deep into next level numbers.
Yes.
And also, I think you're not giving credence to your eyes either. I mean, A'ja has been so clearly the best player in the world. And this entire season, I remember there was a game last year towards the end of the season where Rebecca and I turned to each other in a commercial break. And we were like, whoa, A'ja Wilson is unbelievable. And we always, she's been great for a long time. But the interesting thing about A'ja is she keeps ascending, right? And I think this year she's hit a level that I don't know if we've ever seen in this league. She's been that good. And so for me, like, Napheesa Collier's had an unbelievable year. Definitely. And I think in different seasons, you could easily see her being an MVP, especially when you consider how much Minnesota struggles when she's on the bench, how incredible their season's been, how much they struggled when Napheesa was out those few games, how good Napheesa is as a two-way player. But this year it's A'ja. It's A'ja. She's been historically good. For as much as the Aces' regular season was underwhelming, I can't imagine what it would have been if she wasn't as historically great as she was.
That's facts.
Right? I mean, because Kelsey went through struggles at different times this year. Jackie post-Olympics went through her struggles. Chelsea obviously was not right until recently, just health-wise. And A'ja was having to do it all and seemingly could. And then for Rookie of the Year, I also think, it absolutely could be unanimous. It is an easy choice this year with Caitlin Clark. Obviously, for a while, I think there were arguments to be made for Angel and how well she played. But then from basically, beginning of July on, Kate made it a no contest because she was just, she was unbelievable. Not only the way she can orchestrate an offense, but the way she turned that team around from starting one. Right. And you see also the way her teammates are at their best with her. Think about the way Lexi Hull's playing. Think about the way Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston are playing. Like, she's also, and obviously that's also a credit to them individually, but Caitlin's elevating everyone around her and what she's doing, scoring and assisting. We really haven't seen that combination at this level before in this league. So, yeah, I think I'll be stunned to see to see anybody other than A'ja win MVP and Caitlin win Rookie of the Year. And I think that there's a strong possibility that Asia's unanimous, and I think there's a pretty decent possibility that Caitlin is as well.
Yeah, and so you talked about Caitlin and pretty much post-Olympic break. So post-Olympic break, the Indiana Fever ranked 5th in wins overall, 1st in points, 1st in field goal percentage, 1st in three-point percentage, and 4th in assists since that point. So it kind of was a neck and neck situation, and then it was like Indiana, led by Caitlin, just took off. And so I want to get into like a couple of the rounds because, well, with the WNBA, there's only 4 in the first round, and so the first matchup is my squad, the Dream, versus the Liberty, and the numbers are numbering. All right, so if you look at the head-to-head matchup, the Liberty has won 3 out of the 4. They average 80 points against us. We average 72. We shoot 25% from 3 against them. They shoot 35. This one is looking like a tough matchup. I know we just won recently. Your thoughts on this series?
I think it is a tough matchup for your dream. And really, that's just more about how great the Liberty are, right?
Yes.
They're, you know, first of all, Breanna Stewart is playing unbelievable basketball post-Olympics. We talk about the best players in the world, and obviously for very many years, it's been Asia and Stewie as those top two. And while Asia has clearly been the best player in the world this season, Stewie, I think, in the second half of the season is reminding everybody of her excellence. And that she obviously has that number 2 spot without question in the league. And that makes everything seem possible. I think the thing about the Liberty this year, they're deeper than they've been. They have more versatility with their lineups. Leonie Phoebish is a huge reason why for that. The way she allows them to have a little more size, the way she allows them to defend if they don't want to keep Sabrina and Sloot on the floor together. And then, the one thing I would say is Sabrina Ionescu, beginning of the year, maybe the first 60% of the season, 70% of the season, I thought she probably would be like number 3 on MVP ballots. Obviously, Asia was going to be 1. I thought Fee would be 2. And I thought Sabrina was having such an unbelievable season and really was more the engine for the Liberty than she's ever been before when it came to facilitating, that she could be 3rd on those ballots. And she's really struggled post-Olympics. I think probably more so she hurt her neck, missed a couple games. Maybe that wasn't all the way right, and so the shooting struggled. So, if she struggles, there is a little bit more of a door open against New York. But if Sabrina plays like she played for the majority of the season, they're a really complete, excellent team. I would say this about your dream. When we saw Ryan Howard in the playoffs last year, she was balling.
Yeah.
And you get a scorer like that in a short series, it can put fear into an opponent. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we have some moments in game 1 or 2 where we see Ryan and Tina go on a, 14-2 run themselves. Ryan puts up 20 points and a half, and, all of a sudden it's a really tight game, and it's gut check time for the Liberty.
No, I love that. And speaking of Stewie, in that head-to-head matchup against the Dream, she averages the most from the Liberty at 21 points. So I think you're spot on with that. Then we got number 2 versus number 7, the Minnesota Lynx versus the Phoenix Mercury, which this is a very intriguing one to me. The Lynx are first in so many categories this season. First in 3-point percentage, first in opponent 3-point percentage, first in assists, second in opponent points, third. They are the top of the standings for a reason. You know how sometimes you watch it's like they are at the top for a reason, but then they're going against a Phoenix Mercury team where I've seen some teams elevate their play. Like, if this is Diana Taurasi's last year, what will the Phoenix Mercury morph into to try to make it the best ending as possible? I'm curious your thoughts on that matchup.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because on paper, Phoenix has the kind of top-end talent that you look at and you say, hey, they should be able to win a 3-game series against anybody. If Diana can turn back the clock for a couple games, if BG can look like BG, right? We know Kalia Copper is a top, 3 or 4 guard in this league.
Definitely.
And then Cloud and what she does two-way, plus, some of the other pieces you add in around, you feel like, okay, that like a Rebecca Allen or Sophie Cunningham, you feel like, hey, that's a team that absolutely can compete with anybody. But what worries me for them is they just haven't looked like that team this whole year. They've had chances for whatever reason, sometimes injuries, sometimes, maybe lack of cohesion. It's new for some of those players. They just have never totally connected in a way where they looked like a dangerous team. So on paper, I still think, hey, it's Diana Taurasi. We always know the Mercury can be scary in these spots, regardless of the regular season records. The Connecticut Sun, remember that all too well from those one-game playoffs where they had way better regular season records, and then Phoenix came in and Diana took them out, right? But Minnesota is so good. And the way they share the basketball, the way they defend, and the way they shoot the 3 across the board on that roster, plus Cheryl Reeve and the championship coach that she is, it's hard for me to see Phoenix doing damage in this series, as fun as it would be if they did.
Definitely. And in the head-to-head matchup, the Lynx have won 3 of the 4 games against the Mercury. And to that BG point, she's only averaging 10 points against them on 30% field goal. So she would definitely be an X factor. All right, what about the series that you're covering? We got the Sun versus the Fever. And when we come to that, like, Fever are absolutely the hottest team right now coming out of Olympic break. But then you also have the Sun. It's interesting because they started the season crazy hot, and then the Fever ended the season crazy hot. What are your thoughts on that matchup?
You know, I think this to me is the series that'll be the tightest in the first round. Indiana not only was winning games, but they were winning games against good teams the second half of the year, right? Saw them hang with, not beat, but hang with Vegas in a way that they hadn't earlier in the year. Saw them finally beat Connecticut. Saw them finally beat New York. Saw them beat Minnesota, then lose to them once they had feedback, but play tight games with them. I think we saw them beat Seattle after they had a lot of trouble with them earlier in the year. So we saw them beating winning teams. You know, Kelsey Mitchell, the way she can score, her speed, right? Aaliyah Boston and her ability to facilitate as a big, in addition to score and rebound and defend. Lexi Hull shooting, you know, the lights out from 3, shooting a gazillion% from 3 since the starting lineup. And then Caitlin, who since the beginning of July has been the best guard in the league, a title I'm pretty sure she's going to hold for a very long time. You know, they're an offensive juggernaut. Definitely. That I think you absolutely have to respect and say is a live underdog, a very live underdog. The thing that worries me for them in this series is we have seen they can get very frustrated when things go against them, when they don't get calls, you know, when all of a sudden a few breaks don't go their way. And a couple of games ago against Vegas, I thought it was kind of their undoing in a close game. Well, Connecticut, even though we know AT loves to chirp more than any player in the league, right? I mean, AT will go for days. But Connecticut is very poised in the playoffs. They've been here before. Yeah. They have the experience. And I think that there's going to be tight games. And even though I would trust Indiana's ability to go get a bucket more than Connecticut's because of Caitlin, I trust Connecticut's ability to stick together, to do what they have to do, and to defend consistently in a way you need to win a series. So I think it's going to be a really tight series. Won't be surprised if Indiana finds a way to win, but I think you have to say Connecticut's definitely the favorites and respect their experience and the addition of Marina Mabrey to go with that already talented core.
No, that's definitely, I agree. And even if you look at the head-to-head challenge, Connecticut versus the Fever, Dejanay Carrington to me is such a huge X factor. She averages 17 points in that matchup, shooting 48% while guarding the other team's best guard, which is probably going to be Caitlin. She averaging 3 steals a game in that matchup. So to your point, I really think it's going to come down to how do they handle that style of pressure. When it comes to Connecticut is going to be locked in. Like you said, the Fever, that's a team that even if you want to, trying to stop them to score is going to be tough. And then we got our final series where it's the 4 versus 5. I know that you said that was probably going to be the closest one. This 4 versus 5 is interesting because this is the reigning champs that have maybe a ranking that's not necessarily who they are. We know they didn't have Chelsea Gray for a lot of the beginning of the season. In this matchup head-to-head, Vegas has beaten Seattle 3 times to 1. Every top seed in this series has won 3 of the 4 matchups of the team they're playing against. But when it comes to Vegas, I mean, their numbers, they're 4th in wins this season, 1st in points, 4th in 3-point percentage, 5th in opponents' points. They're not where they usually are, but to me, they're still such a scary team because we know what they are. What are your thoughts on this series?
I agree with you, Renee. They're a scary team. And I think I go into these playoffs seeing the way Vegas played the last few weeks, knowing their championship experience, and seeing how much better Chelsea looked over the last couple of weeks, because Chelsea wasn't Chelsea for the vast majority of this season. And I don't know that she's all the way back yet still, but she looks a lot closer to it. And we know how clutch she is in big moments. If she can look like close to peak version of herself, that makes Vegas very dangerous when you think about Kelsey and Jackie, and then obviously Asia, the best player in the world. So Seattle's had a really nice year. The way they reconstructed their roster around Skylar, who's been really good, especially of late, around Nique, who I had on one of my all WNBA teams. And I actually had her fifth in my MVP voting as well. She had a great year. And obviously Jewel being the mainstay there. But Jewel and Ezzy have been a little banged up. I think Vegas is the heavy favorites in this series, especially because of the way they've looked over the last few weeks, looking very much like themselves.
No, I love that. And so I'm just curious because I've worked alongside a lot of people. What's that prep look like for you getting ready for these games? Because I've seen people that have their boards where it's all like, so I'm just curious, what's Ryan Ruocco's world look like?
Yeah, you can see I started to do my,
there it is. Yes.
Started to do my Indiana boards. Yep. Got them here. So, and then
what's on those boards for people that don't know? What kind of stuff is on? Like, because you'll literally say the most random stats at the perfect time. And it's like, obviously you're over prepared for every game.
100%. Yes, you got to be. Well, Mike Breen taught me this when I was in college. He said, you only use about 10 to 15% of what you prepare, but you never know what 10 to 15% you're going to have to use. So you have to have it all. And so you do. So just for example, these were like my Liberty boards. I'll do printout ones during the regular season. I handwrite all during the playoffs then, but I'll put handwritten notes in the middle. So I have some notes like on the inside. Sirena from 2-point range. Last year, she was 38%. This year, she's 49%. Wow. So then I just know in my head, if I see like her hit one of those floaters, like, hey, she's really improved inside the arc this season, boom, say that number, I'll have a lot of like big picture historical stats too, especially for a player like Caitlin, who has set all these records this year that I'll come to the table with on Sunday. Same thing for Alyssa Thomas. I'll have a lot of different historical nuggets for her, for DeWanna Bonner, and then specific things within the season, team rankings, maybe little stories. They're overall just like basic numbers as well. And then I always like to have career field goal percent, career 3-point percentage, career free throw percentage on my boards. I denote that with an underline because if Renee Montgomery steps up to the line to take key free throws, like I want to know, regardless of what you've shot that year, what are you shooting in your career?
Yeah.
Probably Renee, what were you? 80, 85, 86% from the line in your career?
Why do you know these things, Ryan? What is up with that? Like this.
I'm going to have to look and see if I nailed it.
I know it's somewhere around. Right. I know it's somewhere around there. I hope it's not below that. But do you have a catchphrase? Like, you said Mike Breen. It made me think of bang. Yes.
Yeah. Mine would be you bet.
Yes.
So I'll try and save it for either like big momentum threes or really deep threes or game winning threes, something like that. I used to just use it. It was my favorite thing I had in my arsenal. And I used to just use it all the time. And then Tim Corrigan, who's our boss, who oversees NBA and WNBA now, actually, again, and he's produced the NBA Finals for years and years and years and years. And he's just a fantastic production mind. And he really knows the business. And he said to me at one point, he's like, hey, you bet is good. He's like, I like it. He was like, but use it more sparingly. Use it in a big moment. It doesn't have to be the end of a game. Maybe it's the end of a run. Maybe it's a 16-0 run to start the first quarter. But use it in moments that feel big, not just haphazardly. And I think he was totally right. So it's become more of a thing for me, thanks in large part to Tim's advice.
Okay, so basically use it as an exclamation and not as a period. Ryan, I appreciate you. This was awesome breaking down the numbers. I love being able to talk to people that just like, you're in it, you're in the thick of it. I appreciate you joining us, and I'm going to be tapped in, man. I'll be tapped in. You bet.
Thank you, Renee. You're the best. Anytime for you, my friend, and let's have a great playoffs.
All right, thank you. Welcome back to Montgomery and Company. It's time for Let's Talk ATL, where we discuss the biggest topics going on in our great city of Atlanta. We have music and marketing expert Nick Love, and then we have journalist and social media guru Don Montgomery here with us again today. Y'all feeling all right?
Yeah,
excellent.
Real good.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. So I'm gonna get it started this week because it's award season. I told y'all I like awards, and Atlanta was voted in the top 5 of best sports business cities.
Okay,
so you see it like so y'all
undeniable.
believe that one. So
what number were we?
Sports Business Journal voted us 4th as the top. Okay, so you mad about that as the top, and the rankings were based on factors such as tenured franchises, large-scale events, modern venues, global sponsorships, and talent.
Okay, who was 1 through 4?
Okay, I'm glad you
because I need background.
I know she's getting to the facts. I
Yeah.
love it. So the top 3 cities are Orlando, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles.
No.
So
no. And to that credit, we should be 3.
Who you taking out of that top 3?
Move LA down. No, I'm gonna let Orlando have it because Orlando does have a lot of sporting events and they consistently get it. If you look at sports commissions and how they do these events, so we're getting the college football playoff again. We only got that because Orlando has had it, or these other people have had it, multiple times. One thing I will say is I would like to know where Tampa falls because Tampa is right up there with us in hosting sporting events. Hence
you think
why
Tampa
I'm just
and Orlando should be in the top?
Listen, I honestly do. I think Florida has a monopoly on this, but I genuinely love going to Orlando. You're not gonna pay me to go to Las Vegas. I mean, you can pay me, but I'll go. But I'm not gonna be excited to go to a sporting event in Las Vegas. That's just me.
Are you serious?
I'd rather go
one
to
of the
Orlando.
biggest sports cities now.
I would have thought for sure Vegas would be number 1.
Yeah, I'm
banking on
actually yes.
Go Aces though.
I actually thought, okay, we love
go Aces.
Okay,
support.
I know, if you know how by the way, this is a side note on social media. A lot of times people say that we're their second favorite and the Aces are the first, or vice versa. So there's something about the people that like the Atlanta Dream and the people that like the Aces. So I'm not really mad at that.
Right.
I'm actually surprised because I thought you was gonna snag Orlando out because I would have assumed Vegas is cooking right now.
For sure.
As far as sports and business, Vegas holds the NBA in-season tournament there. I mean, they have Summer League there. And these are recurring things annually every year. They done won championships with the Aces back-to-back in a certain amount of years.
But you got to think about all of the other events, right?
Yeah.
So,
hockey?
Orlando is going to get majority of, hockey stuff or track and field. They have ESPN World of Sports there. So, you got to think about, from a business standpoint, you've got high school, little league, all of these other things that are big money tickets. And yes, we're thinking more professional sports.
Isn't that what it's based on, though? Aren't these the pro? Isn't this a pro award?
Well, if it's pro, then I can see that. But
Journal?
as far as I'm concerned, just overall, I would leave Orlando alone. I
What
wouldn't
do you
give
think
them
about
one.
that top
I wouldn't give them one.
Educated me because I would have thought for sure Vegas would be number 1.
Yeah.
Atlanta would be 2, 3.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would have plucked Orlando out immediately.
that.
I'd be like, okay, what? Because when I think about
Orlando paid for that.
What's the Little League World Series? Don't they do that down there?
Yeah.
too?
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm like, all right, that's cute. But so?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
If your
agree.
kid not playing, are
I
you
agree
watching
with
the
his
Little League
ranking.
World Series?
His ranking is way better.
So you would have it be Vegas 1, Atlanta 2. I mean, LA, I feel like LA's always going to be in the mix. Isn't LA
But I feel like Atlanta is the
LA
new,
is about
it's the
to get
new
the
of
Olympics.
that.
That's
Yes.
I
about
feel like LA
it.
been around and it's the classic city,
So
right? for
LA
all the stuff.
3-ish?
Yeah, LA
Are we
3.
surprised that
LA
New York is not in the top
6-ish.
3?
Yes.
I mean, New
I'ma
York
give
is New York
LA 6.
always.
But the weather.
Okay.
Nobody wanted to be in New York for
Okay.
nothing. Like
Right.
what was the last thing that was in New York? Was it Super Bowl? What was one of the big weekends was in New York and it was awful.
Yeah.
Just the way because when it was Super Bowl. When the NFL comes to town, they take over.
Yes.
And you can feel the
You know where
energy
they
of
are.
the NFL is in town. When it was in New York, it was kind of like, oh yeah, they still doing that here?
Oh, 'cause New York
York's
got
still
too
New
much
York.
going.
It's still New York. It didn't feel
So
like
much
anything had shifted. It was just some same tall
Right,
buildings,
right.
some same busy streets. And then, oh yeah, by the way,
It's
they're doing
dirty.
that thing down the street.
Uh-huh.
It's like,
It's
that didn't feel
dirty
like that.
too.
All right, I like it. So if we had to do our re-ranking, we happy to be in the top 5. But
Yeah, we'll take it.
We would be top 2 if we had to do
Yeah,
it.
for sure.
Our Let's
Exactly.
Talk
For
ATL
sure.
crew. We have ATL top 2. No problem.
Always.
What you got this week? Nick, you go this time because you let Dawn go last time.
I did let you,
You
go.
did.
Yeah,
last
you
time.
always a
You're so
gentleman. You always
kind.
go second because you
okay.
always
So
let the
kind.
lady go.
So I want to talk about Anthony Edwards.
Oh,
Anthony Edwards is
I
actually that's
love
probably
him.
my new favorite Atlanta.
I love Okay.
Atlanta
You
athlete.
know that's
and it's my guy. Atlanta, as I call him.
Atlanta, I love that.
That's my guy. He's straight Atlanta, straight West Side. Like everything about him, his demeanor, the way he talks.
Very
the whole
so
nine.
Atlanta.
So he made a statement that the players back in the 90s weren't very athletic. He was like, we mopped the floor with those guys. Then I saw Dominique Wilkins on All the Smoke.
Yep.
He says, I hate that the young guys have to murder us in order to make
That's
their
the
point.
PG-13 version that you just gave.
He's like,
Thank you.
exactly. But he's like, they have to put us down in order to make themselves look better. But I'll be honest with you, I kind of agree with Ant.
Me too.
I kind of agree with Ant.
Let's hear it. Your Honor, state your case.
When I look at those games from the 80s and the 90s and even the early 2000s, but definitely from the 80s and 90s, the players outside of the stars seem like head and shoulders above the rest of the league. When we look at the parity in the game today, there are athletes, there are ball players on every team. Across the roster, the 6th, 7th, 8th man on the bench can also play, is fast, is strong, the whole nine. When you look at player number 6, 7, 8 from the 80s and 90s, those guys,
they were practice players. They knew their roles. Yeah,
those guys might have punched the clock somewhere else earlier in the day and then came to the game that evening. Like no lie, like those guys was.
Do y'all actually know the 7th, 8th, and 9th players? Like, cause I don't actually know them. Like, it's like
from the 80s and 90s or now?
From the 80s and 90s, like Kip.
No,
it's like,
no one does. Jordan didn't know him.
Oh my
Jordan
God.
couldn't tell you the guys that weren't on the starting roster on his own team.
Oh wow.
He didn't care.
I guarantee he probably did know. Now,
you think so?
Give him a little credit because he was probably talking to much bull, in practice.
I don't even think he talked to them. I don't even think he acknowledged them guys outside of anything.
I think so. From an angle, Okay, I'm a little on the fence about this because in one way where I would agree with you that they could probably beat them, I also feel like they were more marketable. Like there's more money, all of that. So that's where I think
back in the day or now?
Now.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
So like I think they beat them there. And I think maybe that type of like status and that, just awareness of self, I think that kind of elevates how they might feel like they can play on the court. But I would like to see it. I mean,
hold on. I got a counter though, and I would love to hear what Renee says.
Okay.
I think the 80s and 90s women could beat today's women.
Ooh.
Now that I agree.
You bring a good point, Your Honor. So it's interesting. 80s, 90s, and even hitting the 2000s, right? There was a different style of ball played. Like,
for sure.
I always have to give grace to the younger gen because I always be like, we didn't have social media. We didn't have, like, I was outside. Like, when I mean outside, like, I literally was on the court all day
literally
long.
Outside.
So the way that the ball was
in the
an
sun.
extension of my hand, it's like they don't really necessarily, the handles are different now. The game, there's something about when you play the game of basketball, like even in pickup, even like, it's like you start to learn little nuances, little tricks of how to get past people. I really do feel like there's a different era of basketball being played. Like, which is why I think a lot of people want WNBA players to retire. We hear a lot about like, why doesn't this person retire?
Diana Taurasi.
And then you'd be like, okay, Dawn.
Wow.
Diana Taurasi.
Dawn.
She's done.
And then but people, I mean, to that point, people be like, why doesn't this person retire? And then that person's like, why don't you make me retire? Like, these rosters.
Get me out of here.
Exactly. So that's the thing. Our WNBA league, for a very long time, we became a league that kept on getting older and older and older. And everybody, every year, we'd have the same thing happen on draft year where people are like, this person didn't make the team. This person didn't get drafted. And everybody was wondering why. I think your question is why.
Why? Yeah, exactly.
There was some real stone cold killers. Like even DeWanna Bonner, she was like a number 8 pick in our draft.
Yeah.
She would be a number
balling.
She would be a number 1 pick in every draft. To this day, at that point, but in our draft, she wasn't necessarily a top 4 pick, top 5 pick. So I don't necessarily know if we were better, but I think it's a different style of ball, is how I would say.
So another angle I want to bring to that point though is that when you look at the makeup of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, a lot of you all played overseas. Yeah. And I think some of these younger generation players, they're not going to necessarily have that experience because they might not have to go over there because they're making their money in other ways.
Good for them.
But there's experience. like there's experience that you gain from going over there. So that to me itself would make you all more athletically capable of beating them. You know what I'm saying? Like just because you have a more
you got a little Euro something in your game. What was you gonna say, Nick?
Well, I was gonna say when I saw the documentary, or I saw a piece of a documentary this past week, right, where they were showing like the clips of the dream teams.
Oh yeah.
From the men and the women. Though. They would, like the women's team that had Cheryl Swoops and all of them. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, I think Bron, Steph, KD could beat Chuck, Mike, Magic. I think that could happen. But when I looked at the Cheryl Swoops team, I'm like, nah. Like, I don't know who.
No.
I think Asia could compete.
Okay. We're good
I think Asia could compete in both areas.
Yeah.
I think there's a handful of players. Brittany Griner, I think she would translate well into 80s, 90s ball. But outside of that, I'm like,
interesting.
I don't know.
All right, listen, we got a quick. Don, what you got for this week? We got a quick
I just want to
second.
give a shout out to Chris Eubanks. You know,
Okay. Yeah, give a shout out to him.
I think he's doing an amazing job as a commentator and reporter during the U.S. Open. And I think it's been beautiful to see him interview his like colleagues, his peers. And he looks taller. I think that's one of the biggest running jokes is how tall he looks in these interviews. But in general, I think it's beautiful to see an active player who played at Georgia Tech, who we've seen him in a lot of the Opens or a lot of these tournaments and things like that, and be successful and also show us what life looks like beyond the sport. So I want to give him a huge shout out. He's my guy. I like him. I like him a lot.
Shouts to Chris
Eubanks
because the U.S. Open, I turn on Hulu and they suggest everything that they suggest for me is U.S. Open Court 1, Court 2, Court 3, Court. I'm like, dang.
We're going to make you watch it.
Right. If we got WNBA promo like that, it be on and popping. But that's a discussion for another day.
For sure.
That's all we got for Let's Talk ATL. Again, y'all know what to do. Follow @ Don Montgomery. Parental discretion advised. I'm going to say it every time because I know this is a family show. Y'all might listen to this as a family. So I'm just saying, I told you. And then listen. Nick Love ATL. Every Monday, you have your Monday
morning marketing meeting.
Monday morning marketing meetings. He has interesting thoughts about ATL, about music, about marketing. Great follows all the way. We'll be back with more Montgomery and Company.
That's nice. I forget his last name, and I love him.
We're back at it again, Atlanta Dream Media Day, and as y'all know, we all do it for the dream here. So here on MoCo, we wanted to learn a little bit about the players, about the squad this year. So we had a little pregame intros. Let's get it.
My name is Ariel Powers, and I entered the W in 2016.
My name is Alicia Gray, and I entered the W in 2017.
My name is Cheyenne Parker. I entered the WNBA in 2015.
I'm Haley Jones. This is my second year in the W.
My name is Jordan Canada, and I got drafted in 2018.
Leticia Me here, and I entered W in 2023.
I am Naz Hillman, and I entered the W in 2022.
My name is Nia Coffey, and I came in 2017.
Ryan Howard, 2022.
She's a baby.
My name is Tina Charles, and I was drafted in 2010.
Who was your favorite player growing up?
It was Maya Moore, and I like CP, Candace Parker, and I like Simone Augustus. Yep.
My favorite player growing up, Maya Moore.
Candace Parker.
Oh, she just.
I know.
Tamika Catchings, my favorite. I was like a super fan.
Wow.
I had a couple. I had Kobe, AI, Ivory Latta.
Candace Parker.
My favorite player on the men's side was LeBron, and on the women's side, Candace Parker.
Oh, Maya Moore. Yeah, don't know why I thought about that.
Maya Moore, Candace Parker, Tamika Catchings.
My favorite player growing up was Patrick Ewing. Just grew up being a Knicks fan, the 90s Knicks, so Patrick Ewing for sure.
What pregame music do you listen to get yourself in the right space?
Okay, it depends on my mood, right? I know I'm in a good space and I'm ready to go out there and just go to work. I'm listening to, you know, like some Tupac, some like something hard that's like get me in that zone that I want to go out there and destroy everything.
Pre-game music, Rod Wave, Drake, 21.
I like listening to a combination of things. I like meditation music. So Janae Aiko is like my go-to. I love her.
I'm a slow jam, R&B, throwbacks. Give me some Peebo Bryson, some Teddy Pendergrass. That's on me.
If it's not Nipsey Hussle, it's probably some type of R&B.
Ooh, probably some Afro beats. Probably like Bounce by Rema.
I honestly put my phone on shuffle, and whatever shows up and whatever vibe catches me first, I'll stick with it. If it's chill, if it's mellow, I'll go with it until like right before the game. I'm like, okay, I gotta switch it up.
Gospel, Afrobeat, and sometimes like just nothing, like just
no music. You just locked in.
Scout report.
I like that.
Yeah.
R&B.
Pre-game, I'm very slow. There could be some jazz, there could be some Masego. I'm very chill. I think it matches my personality. I think I'm very chill.
Oh, my bad.
My mom comes here, so I don't have to miss anything.
I talked to your mom for a long time just now.
One thing I miss from home is my mom. Yeah, I love my mom. She's like my ride or die, my best friend.
Home cooking, for sure.
My mom's cooking. Easily. Oh my God. Every time she comes, I'm like, I need this dish and this dish.
What's the dishes?
Mac and cheese. She has an amazing relative cake. Anything she does.
My mama's cooking.
Y'all big hungry team. Everybody said the same thing.
What do I miss about New York? Let me think.
You know what? I miss Coney Island.
Okay. Do I miss home? No, I'm just playing. One thing I miss home is probably just my family.
I just miss my people. Like, I miss my mom, my dad, my brother. I just miss my people, yeah.
Just like my family, I'm a big family person, even though my mom and dad come to a bunch of games. Just like being in our house, dad's home cooked meals. That's what I miss from home.
What's one thing you love about Atlanta?
Ooh, the culture. Like, even just going around, like, I feel it and I love it. Like, I love it here.
I love the energy here. I'm not gonna lie. The energy is definitely different.
One thing I love about the A, I would say, is just there's always something to do. And it doesn't have to be like a party. It can be like a just chill, hangout type vibe, but there's always something.
What I love about Atlanta is just the blackness, just seeing individuals that look like me. I think it's so powerful. I think it's so beautiful. You just don't know how much you actually need it and what it feels to be in that environment, but also the diversity as well.
I love the people. I tell people all the time, like, just so much energy. The vibes are great. People are so nice because you kind of get a little bit like the country nice, but also like, you know, city nice as well. So very welcoming people.
The food.
Okay.
Yes.
Big hungry.
Yeah. The food.
The dream, of course, living it. I love how diverse it is, like a big city, so much diversity. I love that.
Just like the culture of the A. It's a fun atmosphere. And, Atlanta's very mysterious, too. Like, it's always a show. Like, you never know what you're going to see.
I just love the energy here. Like, being from the Bay has a certain type of energy and vibe to it, and I think the A has something similar. Just like being around other young black entrepreneurs who are so driven and just have visions for themselves and their future. I really enjoy surrounding myself with that energy.
All right, man, I always appreciate y'all pulling up on us here at Montgomery and Company. And for my dose of positivity, whether it's the WNBA playoffs, which is what I'm very experienced in, or if it's a big presentation you have at work, my life hack for stressful moments is to over-prepare. Like, dive into it. I would get extra shots, study my scout a little more. The more prepared I felt, the less anxious I feel. So when you're feeling stressed or you feel like there's a lot going on, try to see how you can prepare more to make yourself feel more comfortable. Rest up, work out, eat well. Building up your muscles on your body is kind of crazy, but we talk about mind, body, and spirit. It's a real thing we do in sports. So work on your mentals. But anytime that you have a stressful moment, find ways to release that stress. Don't just let it sit inside of you. Manage your time better. Practice self-care. And I'm saying this, and I know, like, I'm talking to myself at this point. Like, my self-care, I get massages. It's like my moment where everything stops and I slow down, and it's like, thank God for granting me this moment of clarity. That's a Jay-Z bar, but maybe that's what you could do. Find ways to release your stress and maybe not try to do it on your friends, your family, your loved ones that just happen to be around and they didn't really do it to you. It's just your job that got you stressed. I'm just saying, all right? That's my life hack. But I appreciate y'all for joining us for another episode of Montgomery and Company. Y'all know I'm your host, Renee Montgomery. I better see y'all next week. Thank y'all for joining us for this episode of Montgomery and Company. Remember, if you've got a question for the MoCo mailbag, send it to us at moco@wabe.org or at Montgomery Co Pod on Instagram. This show is produced by Think Tank Productions in collaboration with WABE. Our executive producers are Amena Brown, Scotty Crowe, and Sirena Grace. Audio production is by Kevin Rinker and Matt Owen. Video by Ariel Brown, Greg Harding Films, and Rashad Pitts. Until next time, I'm Renee Montgomery, and this is MoCo, where it's all sports, culture, and family business.
WABE.